dressed in vibrant, colorful clothes, with friendly gestures and a bright smile. To children, clowns are symbols of joy and laughter. Yet, in the dark world of horror, this image turns into the ultimate nightmare. Terrifier is the clearest proof of that. Like a twisted contrast from a bringer of joy, the clown Art transforms into a demon of unimaginable horror. He never speaks, but his cold stare and twisted smile are enough to freeze the blood of anyone unlucky enough to cross his path. And disturbing. Art the clown doesn't just take lives. He savagely tortures his victims and takes pleasure in it. You can never predict what will happen next, because to this killer clown, murder is a sick form of art. And the crime scene is where he displays his twisted masterpieces for all to see. Today, to welcome the Halloween season, do you have the courage to join me in exploring Art the Clown's Museum of Horrors? Please note, this video will be extremely violent, gory, and terrifying, so consider before continuing, because some things, once etched into your mind, are not easily forgotten. Tonight's guest on Monica Brown's Midnight Talks is incredibly special. She is the sole survivor of last year's Halloween massacre. Vicky sits across from Monica, her face horribly disfigured. For most of the past year, Vicky has lived in a hospital, undergoing numerous surgeries. The only thing the doctors could save was her right eye. She shares how she wished for death after the horrific event, because no one wants to be near her anymore. And children scream whenever they see her. Perhaps Monica wasn't an exception either, as the reporter kept fidgeting in discomfort. However, her professionalism quickly brought her composure back, allowing her to continue the interview. According to the police report, even though the killer's body was taken to the morgue, it later disappeared, and to this day, no one has been able to explain what happened that night. Contrary to Vicky's claim that she witnessed the killer's death firsthand, many believe that Art the Clown, the one who brutally murdered 8 people in one night, is still alive and will return to spread terror once again. The talk show was supposed to end on a positive note, but during the break, Monica carelessly made a derogatory comment about Vicky's disfigured appearance while talking to her boyfriend over the phone. Unfortunately, Vicky overheard already it. Struggling with the trauma, constantly facing curious and fearful stares. This remark was the final straw, unleashing a violent rage within Vicky. From the dark corner of the room, Vicky attacked, savagely gouging out the reporter's eyes, then laughing maniacally. It's impossible to know what Vicky was thinking at that moment, but many psychiatrists later compared this gruesome attack to the horrific acts committed by Art the Clown. If we rewind back a year, it's easy to see why this comparison holds some truth. Around 1 a.m. on Halloween night, 2017, Tara and Dawn left a party, clearly drunk. Knowing it wasn't safe to drive, the 2 young women laughed loudly in the street, planning to find a late-night diner to rest before heading home. From the shadows across the street, Tara caught a glimpse of a man staring at her. He was tall and thin, dressed in a black and white jumpsuit, with a small hat perched on his head. His face was painted white, his eyes and lips smeared with dark black makeup. At first glance, he looked like any other mime performer who you might typically see at an amusement park or a circus. However, there was something about this clown that made Tara feel uneasy. His eyes were wide and blank, filled with a cold, hungry stare. What was most frightening was his rotting teeth, as if they had been ripped from the mouth of a corpse and placed in his crooked, scarred mouth, which didn't match his unnaturally long nose. With a large black trash bag slung over his shoulder, he just stood there staring at the 2 young women, as if ready to devour them. Unlike Tara's anxious reaction, Dawn found it amusing and started teasing the clown. Of course, Tara grew frustrated with her friend's joke, but when she looked back, the man had disappeared without a trace. Relieved, Tara dragged Dawn into a nearby pizza place, hoping to sober up a little before heading home. After a long, tiring day, they just wanted to relax. Steve, the uncle, the staff member, were busy making food for the 2 young girls. But in addition to that, they were also cleaning up the mess in the bathroom left behind by the clown. Apparently, after entering the pizza place, Tara's phone died, and Dawn started chatting away with the guy she'd just met at the party. While they were happily talking, Tara froze in place when she saw the clown enter the pizza place. Glaring at her intently, Dawn, still in a playful mood, approached the clown and took a selfie with him, despite Tara's desperate pleas not to. Steve, visibly annoyed, grew frustrated as the clown sat there, not ordering anything. Making his way toward the young girls. He slipped a toy ring onto Tara's hand, which he had taken from a vending machine, before skipping off to the bathroom. What he did in the bathroom disgusted Steve, who became enraged. He quickly grabbed the clown and kicked him out. Roman kept grumbling, complaining that it would take all night to clean up. They had no idea that in just a few minutes, they would be the next two added to the clown's crime museum. Raymond, irritated, stepped out of the kitchen as all the lights in the dining room suddenly went out. It had gone dark without him noticing. Standing in the dark corner was the eerie clown, holding a knife. Even more horrifying, on top of the pastry display was Steve's bloodied head, staring at him with wide, soulless eyes. Wielding a giant cleaver, the clown began to toy with Raymond. His body parts were quickly removed, as the clown laughed in glee. Not satisfied, he switched to a razor-sharp carving knife as he screamed in agony. According to later reports, Raymond's body at the crime scene was reduced to a pile of flesh. Luckily for Tara and Dawn, they didn't have to witness that scene, but they were like fish on a chopping block. Because once they had encountered the autoground, there was no escape. They quickly discovered that their tire was flat, and they didn't have a spare. Tara borrowed Dawn's phone, and called her sister Vicky, who was up late studying for her finals. She asked her to come pick them up, whether it was out of sympathy for her sister's car or simply because she wanted to give her roommate and her new boyfriend some privacy. As they were cuddled up in bed, Vicky quickly agreed. Tara was worried, as they had run into the creepy clown twice in one night. She kept glancing around nervously, even while sitting in the car, which annoyed Dawn. "Just think of it as Halloween fun," Dawn said, without giving much thought to her feelings. Whether it was anxiety or confusion, Tara suddenly felt the urge to use the restroom, but it was the middle of the night, and not many stores or restaurants were still open to ask to use one. So when she saw Mike, a pest control worker doing his night shift in an abandoned building, step out for a smoke, Tara quickly got out of the car and asked for his help. The only usable restroom, however, was in the basement of the old garage, so it took her a while to take care of business. Just as she was about to head back, Tara ran into a homeless woman who was cradling a doll and treating it like her own child. Not wanting any trouble, Tara tried to slip away unnoticed and returned to the main hall to get back to the car. However, waiting for her at the front door wasn't Dawn or Mike, but the deranged clown, grinning menacingly. A few minutes earlier, after Tara and Mike had entered the building, the car radio began broadcasting news of the massacre at the Dir Hill shop, where 2 employees were murdered. Through the security cameras, authorities quickly described the clown's appearance. This made Dawn uneasy. She realized the suspect was the clown she had just teased a few minutes earlier. She hurriedly grabbed her phone to check the news, not paying attention to who had just gotten into the car. She kept talking non-stop, assuming, of course, that Tara had returned. Little did she know, it was Art the clown sitting next to her. Mike wouldn't find out about the murderous clown in the building until much later. At the moment, he was wearing headphones and cleaning up. After taking Tara down to the basement, if Mike hadn't been playing music so loud, he might have heard Tara's screams. As she was being hunted by Art the clown, with his toolkit in hand, he quickly chained the door shut and used a scalpel to stab Tara in the leg, making her limp as she tried to escape. She struggled to trick the clown into turning away, and then hurried upstairs to find Mike. But the clown quickly grabbed her. He gagged the young girl, then injected her with a sedative, knocking her out. When she awoke, she found herself tied to a chair and witnessed the most horrifying show of her life. On the other side of the curtain, Art had Dawn hanging upside down. Then he pulled out a rusty chainsaw. His eyes glowed with red, and the corners of his mouth twisted into a sickly grin as he began to slice Dawn in half. It was indeed one of the most horrifying and terrifying performances. Forensic experts present that day recounted that despite facing many gruesome cases, this was the first time in their lives they witnessed brutality beyond imagination. Tara's efforts to escape finally paid off, when one side of the chair broke off, allowing her to free herself and find a way to fight the cold-blooded clown. Clutching a wooden plank, Tara lunged at Art the clown, causing him to fall to the ground in pain. But that was a mistake for her, because besides his deadly close combat weapons, the killer also carried a .357 so he quickly ended Tara's life with just a few gunshots. Curious about the strange noises, a homeless woman living in the building accidentally witnessed the clown's crime. In the midst of his excitement, he smiled savagely upon seeing his next prey. Just then, Vicky arrived and kept calling John's phone to tell him to come back to the car. Little did she know that Tara and John were now just 2 lifeless bodies, and the person she was texting was actually the deranged killer. Posing as Dawn, he invited Vicky to the back, because Tara was tired and couldn't move. Vicky's instincts warned her that something was off. Trying to stay calm, she took a deep breath to reassure herself. Mickey entered the building, not knowing that what she was about to witness would change her life forever. However, there was still another victim in the building, Art the Clown, finishing his deadly work of art. That was Mike, the worker wearing headphones, cleaning up all night. Initially, he planned to take care of Mike after knocking him out with a hammer, but he suddenly realized that Vicky had entered the building. So the clown decided to deal with those two first and would settle accounts with her later. To lure the homeless woman, Art the Clown stole the doll she considered her child. Despite her desperate pleas, she even tried to show her motherly compassion by hugging him. But she couldn't escape the Grim Reaper's scythe. With scissors in hand, he removed all of the poor woman's hair, along with her breasts. Then he covered himself with them and lay on the ground, as if taunting his prey. Art the Clown twisted and contorted his body to the music he imagined in his head as he slowly approached. He wanted to play a little longer. The night was still long, and his ideas were far from exhausted. So he let Vicky run throughout the building, screaming in despair, before pulling out a long chain attached to several razor blades and scissors. He then lashed at her repeatedly. In a bloodlust, the killer did not notice that Mike had awakened and was standing right behind him, taking advantage of the moment when the clown was distracted. Mike knocked him out and helped Vicky upstairs. He quickly contacted the police for help and found a way to escape from the hellish building. However, Art the Clown was not an ordinary man. No way I could stand firm after being fiercely resisted by their victims like that. Let alone, it's clear that he easily caught Mike and brutally killed him before savoring the face of Vicky. According to reports from the two police officers present, the entire building resembled a slaughterhouse, with blood everywhere. The only victim to survive could not be identified. They particularly noted witnessing the perpetrator end his own life. However, as mentioned, Art the Clown was no ordinary person. So when the coroner pulled his body out of the bag, the lights suddenly flickered non-stop, and the clown suddenly sat up. This event garnered significant media attention. Many articles described not only the discovery of the dismembered body of the unfortunate doctor, but also the blood-written message of the killer on the mirror. And from here, the name Art the Clown was born. A year after that chilling Halloween night, Vicky attacked the journalist Monica Ground, leading to her being transferred for treatment at a mental hospital in the city. It wasn't until later that authorities realized that her connection with Cleo was far from over. She became a key factor in his eventual return. The truth is, life is full of Tara and Dawn hadn't been so drunk, or if they had been sober enough to drive home, things might have turned out differently. If Vicky had decided to pick up her sister, or if Tara had managed to call a taxi, the tragedy wouldn't have happened. And if Yaneso and her brother, Jonathan, hadn't been so obsessed with the story of Cleo, their family would have been safe. Indeed, the horrific events of Halloween night in 2017 not only became infamous throughout Mio's district, but also spread to other towns, haunting many families. The Ziana family was no exception. They became a source of emotional support for their mother, Barbara, and for her brother, Jonathan. After their father passed away, Ziana frequently had to deal with prolonged anxiety. According to her best friend, almost a year ago, after discovering she had tinnitus, Traciana, who was an artist and designer, went insane and engaged in many extreme behaviors. She constantly talked about Cleo as if she were collecting articles related to him, and even drawing many gruesome images from left behind by that clown. At the peak of her drunken state, she caused a horrific accident at a power station. The locals living nearby recounted. Father Sina's scream that day was so loud that even standing a kilometer away from the scene, they could still hear his desperate cries. To ease the pain and temporarily forget the tragedy, this Halloween, she would honor her father by dressing as the warrior goddess Valkyrie, a costume designed specifically for her by her father. In one of his brief moments of clarity, he had gifted her a real sword to enhance the beauty of the costume. No wonder Sina's tiny room was of various adhesives, bags of silicone molds, and sketches left by her father. Sina planned to take just about a week to finish it, but the small details ended up taking her several months to prepare. She even had to stay up late if she wanted to complete it on schedule. This shows how much love she had for her father, far greater than he could ever imagine. In contrast, her brother, Jonathan, showed interest in the costume of the Count and planned to wear it on Halloween night. There was no way that would allow Jonathan to do that. No mother would want her child to dress like the psychopathic killer. No mother would want her child to dress exactly like the psychopathic killer who had murdered 8 people in one night. Moreover, Jonathan's actions also showed a lack of respect for the families of the unfortunate victims. A heated argument immediately broke out between the three of them, and it only ended when Barbara loudly forbade her son from dressing that way. In fact, Sina was more worried about her brother than angry at him. She understood that Jonathan had not yet gotten over the shock of losing their father. Since the accident, he often locked himself in his room, researching serial killers, especially after Cloud. His desire to dress up as the clown showed that he was deeply obsessed with him. No one could have guessed that this would be the beginning of the tragedy. Later, many researchers of paranormal phenomena hypothesized that O's Count was a demon from hell, who hunted and killed those who knew, or were obsessed with him. To support this, they presented a series of evidence, such as the fact that the clown never made a sound, even when beaten or injured. More terrifying, he always knew where his prey was, to choose how to attack appropriately. This somewhat explains the supernatural phenomena that occurred, such as his immortality, his ability to summon the spirit of Lister Pell Girl, or invade other people's dreams to terrorize them. Sina's nightmares were a prime example. After the argument with Jonathan about the costume he intended to wear, Sina fell asleep while watching TV. In her dream, she found herself at the set of an advertisement for Count Coffee, where O the Count was a special guest. With a ghastly appearance, he crazily fired into the smiling crowd, burning down the set and chasing Sina. In a desperate attempt to escape, Sina drew the sword that her father had given her to block the flames from the gun. If it were just a nightmare, it would be understandable, but when she jolted awake, Sina was shocked to realize that the entire room was on fire. Fortunately, Barbara arrived in time and used a fire extinguisher to put out the flames. Otherwise, who knows what the consequences would have been. In the middle of the night, Sina almost burned the house down, making Barbara furious. She blamed her daughter for not extinguishing all the candles even before going to bed. Explained repeatedly, there was something wrong here. Something very wrong was happening that Sina couldn't explain. That unsettling feeling lingered with the young girl until the next day. Jonathan wasn't doing any better than his sister. He caught after Cloud and Lister Bell Girl playing with the decaying corpse of a creature in the school hallway. Clearly, this wasn't a dream or an illusion, because they threw the rotting corpse over there, towards Jonathan. This caused him to become the prime suspect in the school's chaos. Needless to say, Barbara became furious and lost control. She threatened that Jonathan would be punished and wouldn't be allowed to attend the Halloween festival. Speaking of Sina, after discovering that the wings, an important accessory for her costume, had been burned, Sina decided to take her best friend Ollie shopping in time for preparations. Just relax and let loose. Tonight we will have a blast. Ollie hugged her and said. But it didn't improve Sina's mood at all, especially when she ran into After Cloud right in the store. He stood motionless, with a frozen smile on his lips and his gaze gleefully fixed on Sina. That made Sina's skin crawl. To make matters worse, he followed her to the checkout, doing all sorts of crazy things to the point where the cashier had to speak and remind him to stop. And like all the other victims who had tried to stop the clown, we all understood that as soon as Sina left, the fate of the cashier was sealed. One thing that still hasn't been explained to this day is why he attacked Ollie before going to Sina's house. Somehow, he made his way to Ollie's house, broke through the kitchen window, and then casually walked around as if no one were there. Years later, the townsfolk still recount that horrific event as a way to warn children to be careful when home alone. Besides the torture, After Cloud even removed the scalp and limbs, then poured salt all over the body, causing Ollie to writhe in pain. Finally, the clown began to savor each piece of flesh, just as he had done with Vicky. It was more brutal. He even heartlessly murdered Ollie's mother when she returned home, then used her head as a candy jar. It was just that Barbara finally discovered the sketchbook. of her deceased husband that Jonathan had hidden in the drawer, despite his repeated explanations that after Cloud really exists, he was innocent in the school incident. Jonathan only made his mother angrier. She believed that it was his father who had poisoned the minds of the two unhealthy ideas, leading them to have distorted thoughts. The more she spoke, the more upset as all the pent-up thoughts she had kept inside for so long pouring out, crashing down on her son. Finally, in a fit of rage, she tore up the sketchbook, and Jonathan ran out of the house. It's clear that the departure of Sina and Jonathan's father negatively affected not only the two children, but also Barbara. His wife was also severely affected. She had to bear the entire family on her shoulders, becoming the emotional support for her two children, while having to be both father and mother, which always left her on the brink of collapse. Despite this, Jonathan was still too young to understand, and today's argument was just the last straw. Yet it wasn't over yet, as she discovered the car in the basement was covered in toilet paper, shaving cream, and all kinds of dirt. Unable to take it anymore, she called Ziana to vent her anger. And she only calmed down when Ziana told her she loved her. That statement was like a refreshing stream, soaking her soul, which had become callous and bruised, like a soothing balm for her wounds. After many days of suffering, yet fate always has its cruel way. Because her family was shattered by a simple gunshot, the clown caused Barbara to collapse in a pool of blood before she could understand what was happening. Jonathan's fate was no better. What hit him when he got home was a horrifying sight. Barbara was sitting there, with her face severely distorted. The clown stepped out of the kitchen with a caring demeanor, like a father welcoming his child home for dinner. So he had succeeded in step one, capturing Jonathan. He just needed to take one more step. Luring Sienna to her death would complete his plan. To get Sienna to leave the party, at the count of 3, he called on the help of the entity known as Lister Pell Girl, who had the ability to invade minds, showing Sienna a series of terrifying illusions. Naturally, the group was visibly uncomfortable, as they had originally planned to all party night with their boyfriends. Now, both of them had to take Sienna home. To make matters worse, Sienna received a call from Jonathan, asking to be picked up at the amusement park on the edge of town. They had no idea Jonathan was now unconscious in the trunk of a car, while the person talking to them was actually Lister Pell Girl. And after that, according to the plan, Lister Pell Girl would text to lure Yana to the haunted house at the amusement park. Meanwhile, After Klein would take the opportunity to eliminate her two friends. Was that the group put up a relatively making strong him take fight, a long time to chase them down before successfully killing the girl. At that moment, Jonathan and escaped Sienna from the threat also of followed the screams of her friends to find the scene, witnessing the killer looking at her with brother. A hungry gaze. Yana fought back with all her might and managed to stab him with a nail-studded baseball bat, giving the two sisters a chance to escape. This house was too large, filled with dark corners, and the murderer was an immortal creature. Time and time again, Yana knocked him down, stabbing him with various weapons. Jonathan even shot him twice in the chest, but the clown still turned around, attacking the sisters' minds. Soon enough, Yana was exhausted from too much blood loss, and the only thing that kept her from succumbing to the clown was her love for her brother and her strong survival instinct. However, facing such evil forces, it seemed that wasn't enough. In the end, Aftercount pushed Yana into where there was a gateway to hell, leading to a surreal scene that she rarely got to witness. As Sienna fell into a glass tank filled with water, she fainted to the singing of bizarre characters, according to paranormal researchers. At that moment, the brutal actions of perhaps angered the omnipotent being. They decided the clown had to die, so they revived Sienna, giving her the chance to punish him on their behalf. Some also believe Sienna was chosen from the very beginning to stop the evil, which is why her father gifted her the sword and left behind a series of clues, indicating that one day she would have to confront the clown. No matter how it's explained, it leads to many different theories and questions that no AI can verify. We only know, according to the doctor, treated the two sisters that besides night, Jonathan's serious leg injury, Sienna's injuries were minimal. The police also noted that they found part of the clown's body after Sina used the very sword given by her father to behead him. However, evil always has its own way of resurrecting. Just as they touched victory, Sina and Jonathan jumped in surprise when Lip Tap Tailgun appeared. Apart from holding Oti's head, the clown then left. This mysterious entity had no further impact on the two sisters. It wasn't until much later Vicky that became the chosen one, when she gave birth to the bizarre head of the clown in the dark of night, signaling that evil would continue to run rampant in the future. It was indeed a blood-soaked and crazy roller coaster ride. Few films depict scenes of violence so realistically and crazily as Terrifier. And to extend the killing spree of Adecleo, on October 11th, the film company Dark Ed Cinema has decided to release the third part of the film. Will we learn more information about the latest terrifying entity? Or how many more victims will fall under the scythe of death? And what more will Adecleo show us in his Museum of Crime?